The Property Pod. Welcome to The Property Pod with Moneyweb. The property sector is an ever-changing sector. And in this podcast series, your host, Suren Naidu, chats to movers and shakers in the property industry.
Hello and welcome to The Property Pod, South Africa's premier property investor podcast. My name is Suren Naidu, and on this weekly Moneyweb show, we gain insider insights from leading executives, analysts, developers, and entrepreneurs in the country's dynamic property industry. Our next guest is an entrepreneur and quite a dynamic player in the property industry. Jonathan Liebmann is described as an impact entrepreneur and real estate visionary. Many will know him for his work on the once internationally acclaimed Maang precinct in the Joburg CBD, and to a lesser extent the Rivertown initiative, in which the company he started, Propertuity, worked with Urban Lime at one stage around properties around the Durban International Convention Centre and CBD. Now, Liebmann is one of the driving forces behind BlackBrick aparthotels. As a co-founder, the hybrid hotel group is touted as Africa's fastest growing apartment hotel network. And people familiar or travel or stay in hotels will know that aparthotels is becoming quite trendy, particularly in Cape Town and Johannesburg. With it being September and Tourism Month, we contacted Liebmann to be a guest on the podcast and to share insights on his latest venture. A very warm welcome to the Property Pod, Jonathan Liebmann.
Thanks, Suren. Very good to be on the show with you.
BlackBrick, what's the idea behind it and how has it managed to gain such traction in the apart hotel space? Having started around 2018-19, that was just before COVID, so it's not been exactly the best time to start something like this, but it's thriving.
Yes, so the idea behind BlackBrick is to build a global network of apartment hotels where our guests and members can live and work freely between cities. We started this in South Africa, which is our home ground, and our first building was in Sandton on Predman Drive, which is the old SAB head office that we converted into 208 apartments and hotel rooms. And that went very well. We sold out there in the first month, and we quickly moved on to our next location in the foreshore in the Cape Town CBD, which also sold very nicely. And then we went back to Sandton a few months after that and did the building across the road from the SAB building. So we bought the old Hogan Lovells law firm building that Zenprop had originally developed in the 1990s as an office block. And we converted that into another 292 apartments. And so we now have 500 apartments that we've developed in Sandton between those two buildings. That's become our flagship for the brand. And then most recently, we partnered with GrowthPoint in converting the old AXA head office in Bedford View into another 253 apartments. So those are the 4 developed buildings in the network, but we've got a big pipeline ahead of us. We are on site at our 5th building in Gardens, just on the edge of Cape Town CBD. There we're building 93 apartments, and we're about to launch our 6th project and our 3rd city in the network in Umhlanga in Durban. So that is going to launch to a limited preview and VIP buyers on the 3rd of October, and then launched to the public on the 2nd of November. So we've got a very busy quarter in front of us.
Well, it's just ahead, just after Tourism Month, but you've given a nice explanation of how the group has grown, but where does the venture stand now in terms of total scale in existing units? Because in November last year, there was a media release that talked about R1 billion in sales. Where does it stand overall at the moment?
Yeah, so we've completed 850 apartments. Those are fully developed, and then there's another 174 under development. So we'll be over 1,000 once these 2 next buildings are completed. And in terms of total quantum of sales value, that's over R1 billion of sales that we've done. The business model is that we sell the apartments to investor sectional title owners, and then we manage most of the apartments as short-term hotel stock. So investors get a better return than the typical residential returns over time. Of course, hotels take longer to mature. So we always tell our investors that this is not a short-term investment from an investment profile point of view. Rather, it's a five-year plus investment hold strategy where the revenues from a hotel are expected to outpace your kind of normal inflationary growth that you find from residential apartments over the mid to long term.
What's behind the success of the group? Is it linked to perhaps any tax incentives? I know Section 12J a few years ago was a big thing in the hotel development space, but that's since been withdrawn by the National Treasury. Are there any other elements that come into play when investing in this business?
So we were a beneficiary of the 12J tax incentive in the earlier years. So we had a 12J fund buy 42 apartments. 42 of the 208 apartments in our first development in Sandton were bought by a 12J fund called Habitat. And then that same fund bought another 21 apartments in our second one in Sandton. So we did catch the end of that incentive. As you say correctly, that's now stopped. So there isn't any other that we specifically going after, except that the building we developed in the foreshore in Cape Town CBD, the investors there enjoy the benefits of the urban development zone tax incentive, which looks to encourage investment into the old CBDs within South Africa.
Well, it's good to hear that they still have that UDZ benefits for some areas, and it's actually working. But BlackBrick, most of the properties seem to be office to apartment hotel conversions, like the deal that you just mentioned with the JSE-listed Growth Point in Bedford View. I didn't realize it was the old head office of AXA, but that was a few years ago. Can you highlight some of how that project came into being, because you've already highlighted some of your major properties across South Africa?
Yeah, so for the Bedford View project, I think Growth Point had realized that the office market, especially for B-grade office properties in decentralized locations like Bedford View, the demand for that kind of office property is quite suppressed. And they needed to look for an alternative use case to try and extract the value from it. So they were looking for a partner who had done it before. And given our track record in Sandton, it made sense for them to bring us into that deal, where we've essentially led the sales and the marketing and now the operations of the hotel.
I know you talked a little bit about expansion plans and looking to take the group globally as well, which is quite exciting. But you also mentioned Umhlanga. I know you have a launch coming up, but where exactly in Umhlanga? Your website seems to show it's somewhere in Manga Rocks. Has that property been secured, and when can we expect more information to come out on that?
Yeah, so the Umhlanga property is in Lower Umhlanga, which is on the seaside part of on the other side of the highway, closer to the sea. So it's down there right by the village. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the village, but that's that main strip of restaurants and shops that anchors the urban framework of the Umhlanga CBD. We're about 200 meters away from the village high street. And the building is next door the Buxton's shopping center, where the Buxton Spa has always been for the last couple of decades. So it's a brilliant location. It's the best location that we've had of the 6 buildings to date. We've never had something as prime as this. So we're very excited about the location, and there's very limited stock that can come onto the market in Lower Umhlanga that can compete with us, just given the natural constraints there with the with the forest on one side and the ocean on the other side. So it's a very exciting project for us. We are working with a great local developer there called Avoco that have a big track record in executing projects on time and on budget. Our growth model is to find local expert development partners. So we don't look to lead the development side of things in cities where we don't have a team on the ground. We rather look for partners who can play that role, and then we focus on the parts that we're most skilled at, which is the finding of the locations, the design, the marketing, sales, and the operations of the building post-completion.
You talked about Buxton Center. Is it on Buxton Center? And just clarity on the name of that local developer, because there's a lot happening in Umhlanga village with all the other hotel developments and even competitor somewhat in the apartment hotel space. Capital Hotels has a presence at the Pearls. But yours is quite youthful and targets a different market almost.
Yes, so it's next door Buxton's. Literally next door, and we'll be going live with the marketing towards the end of September, and further details will be available then. The development partner's name is Avoco Developments, so they've done a lot of developments on the ridge on the other side of the highway, in Umhlanga Ridge. And there's a fair amount of apartment hotel stock coming onto the market nationally, but we think that we've got something quite different to the market, and that we're very focused on building a network and an ecosystem. All of our buildings are connected with a program that runs through them, where there's shared experiences and skills that are transferred between these buildings across the country.
We'll get to global expansion in a sec, but it is Tourism Month. Besides the property play, BlackBrick is also a player effectively in the tourism industry. What is the biggest challenge for a group such as BlackBrick in the space? Perhaps is Airbnb an issue? What are some of the challenges that you'd like to highlight?
Look, we went operational with our first hotel in November 2020, so deep inside of COVID, and that continued until the end of 2021. So we had a baptism of fire from a hotel operations point of view. But we survived that, and I guess it probably made us a bit stronger. The hotel market has come back somewhat, of course, since all of the restrictions were lifted, but the economy remains weak in 2022 up until, I think, a couple of months ago, until we had the successful elections, which I think is going to pave the way for a much higher growth economy over the next months and years, together with hopefully a lower interest rate environment that takes the pressure off. So it's been tough in the hotel market, but I think there are good times ahead.
Jonathan, turning slightly to a little bit of the past, it would be remiss of me not to ask about Maang and the perpetuity years. I know you sold perpetuity to RMH before eventually a lot of those properties were sold and you're not really involved anymore. Do you have a little bit of regret perhaps, or what's your thoughts on where Maang is now and a little bit of that history within 10 years ago? But a lot of people know Jonathan Liebmann and they associate you with the huge success of Maang.
Yeah, so look, I think Maang, for the period that I was there, which was 12 years, I think it played its part in turning Johannesburg CBD around. It was I think a far more successful social impact play than it was a commercial play, and probably the structure of capital that went into the project was wrong. If I look back at it, I would have gone out and gotten much softer capital from FDIs and big institutional capital that has a much longer term time horizon on their capital. So I think that's the main lesson to learn there, and then also to recognize that the city of Joburg and their management of the CBD was really just not good enough during that period, and remains that way today. There's just not enough money going into the CBD to support a project of that scale. It's one thing developing a number of blocks as we did, but if the surrounding city is not being improved at the same time, then it makes it quite difficult. But having said all of that, I mean, the place exists, and it continues to thrive for many people. It might not appeal to the exact same demographic as it did while I was there, but I think there's a huge community that still lives and works in the area, and it serves a huge purpose for the city of Johannesburg still today. Even when I go there and I take people there from time to time on a little bit of a walk down memory lane, and I'm very proud of what was achieved. And I think there's still a lot of people there. For example, Curiosity, one of the businesses that started there in the early days, William Kentridge, who still has his art studio there. There's many stories like that of organizations and individuals that used it as a big part of their careers and continue to do so. So, yeah, I think it still works, just in a different way.
Thanks for that. It's a very interesting insight. It does add some context, and I fully understand what you mentioned when you talk about the cost of capital, because it seems now that the likes of the International Finance Corporation and all these other financiers are not just financing such initiatives, but also student accommodation and other things. So turning back to BlackBrick, can you share a little bit about the company on behind the scenes, not the public face, but who are your co-founding partners, and do you have any other players that are involved in terms of, you had a project with GrowthPoint, but I suppose you're talking to others?
Yes, I think in the main operating company and brand, after leaving Maboneng, I joined my father's family office, and we invest in multiple hospitality assets, and so that's one of the founders of BlackBrick, and then the other founder is our partner. His name's Moritz Valensik. He focuses on the more operational side of the business, and I focus on the kind of deal making and development side of the business. So we make a very good team, and he's added a massive amount of value to everything that I do, as opposed to what I had in the past, where I didn't, there weren't any co-founders, and I was kind of far more responsible for the operation. So I've learned my weaknesses and brought on a really good partner in that regard. And so in the operating company, it's really just our family, Moritz, and then we've got an individual investor who's actually just come into the business, who's got a tech background, which is quite exciting for us, because we think that the future of the company, as we scale globally, will be heavily dependent on a strong technology backbone. So we're excited for the role that he's going to be playing. And then, on the development side of the business, as you've said, we've partnered with GrowthPoint on one of the buildings. In some of the earlier buildings, we partnered with a company called Setso Property Fund, which is backed by Buffett's Investments and KLT. So they played an important role in the earlier stages of the development growth there. And then, going forward, we've raised some capital from a private investor for our gardens developments, and we're hoping to recycle that capital into the next projects. As we complete in Umhlanga, we see another 3 or 4 projects coming over the next 3 years.
Thanks for that. Just to conclude, we talked about global. I see your company talks about big cities in the US, Atlanta, quite a few of the major cities there, and Dubai, and other cities around the world. How far along would that be? Are you gaining some traction on your global expansion?
Yeah, so the global expansion is very much a mid to long term strategy. Right now, we're super focused on our South African network, but we're planting the seeds internationally. We do have a local development partner in Mexico City that is looking at a deal with us that's pretty far down the line. Time will tell if that converts. And then we've also got development partners in Atlanta, again, where we're looking to raise money for a BlackBrick on the belt line there, which is Atlanta's equivalent of the High Line. So yeah, we're pretty far down the line with those two sites. Can't promise anything there yet, but ultimately, absolutely, the vision for BlackBrick is a global network, and for us, it's just a matter of time as to how long it takes to get there.
Fantastic. Jonathan, thanks so much for your time on the podcast. That was Jonathan Liebmann, co-founder of BlackBrick Aparthotels.
Thanks for listening to the Moneyweb Property Pod with Suren Naidu. To listen to more episodes, go to moneyweb.co.za or the Moneyweb app and follow Moneyweb News for daily updates. Follow Suren on Twitter @Suren Naidu for more of his property industry content and other business stories. The Property Pod.